For being exposed to these harmful chemicals without our knowledge, but yet we, to this day, experience the impacts. And so I rise in support of this resolution, and I do hope that it achieves success and that our people can receive the health care to address these illnesses. And I think more importantly at this point, if we can prevent them. I mean, moving forward, we know that these toxins have no borders. They filter into our water eventually. And so there has to be a way to ensure that our environment is clean so that our people can be healthy. Sujos Masi.
Sujos Masi, Senator Paris. On the resolution, Senator Taitigui, then Senator Duenas.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of Resolution 29-3037. Many of my colleagues mentioned the devastation of Agent Orange and those individuals who have been plagued by it through cancer or other type of diseases. I know that many of our community watches these sessions and they listen to what's going on. A lot of times they don't have access to these reports that are created, these committee reports, in which many of the stories from these individuals come forward. And I just thought at this time, because this particular testimony that came out really touched me. And I just wanted to read a few things from it. It says, Hafaday and greetings from the Pollock family. With all due respect, I humbly request that your good office include my parents' names and myself. Mr. Betwill Asu Pollock, who was born on, and didn't give the date, who passed away, and my mom, Juliette B. Pollock, born, didn't give the date. She's still alive and living in California today. And I, Johnston B. Pollock, currently living in Guam, traveling back and forth between Guam and California. We have a son in the military service station in Guam, born and raised here. We are the victim and survivors of Agent Orange. With the presumption disease exposure to Agent Orange chemical, presumptive disease. Again, I am Johnston Betwill Pollock, and I am a U.S. citizen and a resident of Guam. My father told me a lot of his secret story in his account during and after he was hired as a contract seaman when he was young to work on the vessels that transported Agent Orange 55-gallon drums from military activities in the U.S., ports en route to Vietnam, Guam, and Johnston Atoll in the Marshall Islands during the U.S. Navy, who administered Guam and Saipan during and from 1950 to 1977. My dad was traveling on the ship between the U.S. ports in Vietnam, Guam, and Johnston Atoll. My dad told me he named me after Johnston Atoll because it's a military secret base for chemical agents for nuclear experiments and testing. It is nearby Kwajalein Military Base in the Marshall Islands. I remember traveling with my parents when I was a little boy between Guam and the Marshall Islands and Micronesia Islands. It was fun, but I never knew those vessels were transporting and carrying chemical agents. Before my dad passed away, he told my mom to stop eating the fish that was caught in Johnston Atoll and some islands nearby, islands in the Marshall Islands, because he was told by the captain and the crew's meeting announcement that there were no more catching fish in the ocean of Johnston Atoll Island after the Agent Orange was dumped into the sea off Johnston Atoll, Bikini, Inuit Atoll, and Wake Island. It was late. We'd been eating those fish that was caught in the ocean of Johnston Atoll and nearby contaminated islands with the exposure of Agent Orange. Only after what my dad learned, we stopped eating fish from the Marshall Islands. Unfortunately, my dad was diagnosed with many complicated ailments: heart disease, liver cancer, skin disorder disease, cancer that affected his blood cells, high blood, prostate cancer, and diabetes. My mom is very ill today, at 84 years old. I'm also diagnosed with skin disease disorder, similar to my dad's skin disease, diabetes, and prostate issues. So sad. I appreciate your time and effort caring for our constituents who deserve the Agent Orange compensation. You can always reach me via email or call my home phone number. On Guam, my Guam cell gives his number. And then he signs off, thanking Senator Lujan. He was named after Johnston Atoll. Johnston Pollock. This is a very touching story, and I hope those who are listening today see that he's not the only one that's been affected, but there are many more, and many more stories. What can we do? Well, we're doing as much as we can. Our voices need to be heard. Our resolutions need to be addressed. And we can never stop trying. At this time, Madam Speaker, I'd ask everyone to please keep those in your hearts and your prayers, those suffering today from cancer, from all these diseases that come from Agent Orange and other radiation exposure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Dueñas, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, and I certainly rise in full support of Resolution 2937. You know, Madam Speaker, when I look at the efforts by yourself and those that you mentioned during your testimony, it reminds me of a gospel song, "It only takes a spark to get a fire burning." You know, I think back to all the hearings that have been held and all the discussions and all the individuals who would come to this august body and spend hours and hours giving us all the background information of what this terrible poison what they believe had done to ravage many of their family members through the years. And it's a testament to how that persistence and insistence really can bring about redress. There's one individual, and I have to bring up his name because I have just a short story, Robert Celestial. I've known him for over 22 years now, and his battle and advocacy on this issue. Recently, on one of our long hearings that went close to 10 o'clock at night, he stayed, and I walked outside, and he approached me and he said, "Have a day, Chris." He goes, "Man, you've been at this for a long time." And he said, "This was another one of those long hearings. How do you do it?" And I looked at him like, "Robert, how do I do this? How have you done what you've done for the years that you've done it?" And you know one thing about Robert, not to take away anything from anyone else who's always been persistent on this issue, that man has like a smiling soul. You know, he's battling something that he believes has also affected him. He's battling an issue that can be controversial and takes a lot of persistence and would make some angry, rightfully so, on some different levels. But his demeanor as he presented himself, he must really have a peace in his soul, because he never came across as angry or combative to me anytime. Passionate, yes. So many of our colleagues today have discussed all the salient parts of this resolution and the issues surrounding Agent Orange and other contaminations that were something that hopefully, because of what we do today, will not happen going forward in the future. So I didn't want to continue to enumerate that because my colleagues have done such a great job, but I wanted to once again recognize this particular individual. I know he probably would be bashful and shy and maybe a little upset with me for bringing up his name, but he certainly is someone who I hold very dear in my heart and pray for daily. And also just to once again say to our people, you know, as my colleague mentioned, I know many do pay attention to what we do here, that persistence will get results. And when you believe in something, hold it dear to your heart and fight with everything you got in order to be able to accomplish that mission. And I think that once again, I want to congratulate Senator Lujan, glad to be a co-sponsor of this resolution going forward, and carrying the torch really and standing on the shoulders of those who have come before to fight this very, very righteous fight. And hopefully now, as he mentioned, we were on a radio show together today, that we have received half of the loaf. And thank God, you know, it's precedence, right? And so now we'll sit back and pray for the other half a loaf to come forward and to bring some comfort to families who really only want the ability to live their life with dignity and the possibility to become disease-free. So with that, Madam Speaker, certainly looking forward to voting on this resolution, and I'm praying that it will get unanimous support. Sus Masi.
Sus Masi, Senator Duenas. On the resolution, anyone else? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too am in full support of this resolution. Wanted to just first start by wishing the best to our friend, Mr. Robert Celestial. Great guy, awesome man, great man. Has tirelessly fought for awareness and action on this cause and others, despite never holding an elected office. He has been the man on this issue. And of course, got to give Speaker Terlahi her props as well. But one great thing about Mr. Celestial is he's so helpful. Anytime I get a veteran who calls me about, they're running into standstill at the VA, or they can't figure out this, can't figure out that, are they eligible for this or that? I always tell them, I got a friend, Uncle Robert, I'm going to give you his number, and you know, when he has time, he'll reach out and call you, and he's very knowledgeable, and it never fails. Every time I send a number over to Mr. Robert Celestial, And then I circle back with the person I asked them to call. They always said, oh, man, Chris, he called me right away. And so that's just the kind of guy he is, that no matter what he's going through, has never hesitated to try and uplift others and to raise awareness on this issue. And the author of this resolution had said in his opening that he hoped this resolution passed unanimously. And I think it will. But let's not forget the days when many people doubted people like Mr. Robert Celestial. Many people said they were kaduku. What are you talking about, Agent Orange? Even the federal government denied and lied about the usage of Agent Orange on our island. When I was a member of the media, I interviewed the late Air Force Master Sergeant Leroy Foster, who was stationed on Guam and who had provided a whole lot of sworn testimony, basically saying that, yes, he did spray Agent Orange all over the island. He even dumped barrels of it, as he was ordered to do so, over cliff lines, down hills. You know what else runs downhill? Water. Running right into our aquifer. Yet, for decades, the federal government lied, deceived, covered up that they were directly responsible for this and all of the impacts that our island and our people have suffered since then. It wasn't until 2022 that the federal government came out and acknowledged and admitted finally what many service members and families of veterans and people here on Guam already knew. And again, that's why it's very important for us to never forget this legacy of contamination and lies that the military has left behind. But a day when we ask questions about the military, they label us anti-military, obstructionists. I'm sure that this resolution is going to pass unanimously, but let's not forget the lessons of the past. That whistleblowers and people come out and tell the truth. And many times we're all too skeptical, all too quick to bury them, to call them crazy. And so I hope we learn the lessons that people like Mr. Celestial and Master Sergeant Foster and all the countless veterans who have served both under that flag and our flag. And let's make sure that we do our best to avoid being on the receiving end of the federal government's sins. And so I ask that we pass this resolution unanimously, and we take what we've learned from this and apply it on all of the issues affecting our island moving forward. To do anything else would be a disservice and a disrespect to the people that this resolution supports. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the resolution, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized on the resolution? Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of this resolution that has been long overdue. We acknowledge through this resolution a grave injustice committed against the innocent civilian residents of Guam who were exposed to the toxic herbicide Agent Orange by the U.S. military. Agent Orange, a dioxin-laden defoliant, has been irrefutably linked to a plethora of severe health issues ranging from cancer to birth defects, among others. Our military personnel who served in Vietnam, my father included, were directly exposed to this chemical and have already been recognized and compensated for their sufferings. Yet, a group that has long been overlooked are the residents of Guam, our fellow citizens, who lived on their lands and faced inadvertent exposure. We're not here to point fingers or reopen old wounds. We are here to address an oversight, to give voice to those who are voiceless, and to provide justice to the unrecognized sufferers. This is about justice and empathy. Our fellow citizens in Guam did not volunteer to be exposed to this harmful agent. Their exposure was inadvertent, a consequence of our military's decision during a time that was very difficult in our history. Their suffering is as real as any soldier's. By passing this resolution, we're not just compensating, we are acknowledging a pain, a trauma that has been passed down through the generations. We are sending a message that we see them, we hear them, and we stand with them. Many of these victims have been living in the shadows for decades, waiting for recognition, validation, and support. By addressing this oversight, we can shine a light on this dark chapter of our history and set a precedent for transparency, accountability, and kindness. In conclusion, this resolution is not just about financial compensation, it's about moral restitution. It's about acknowledging the past, learning from it, and making amends. Let's stand united in recognizing the non-military residents of Guam who were exposed to Agent Orange and provide them with the compensation they so rightfully deserve. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and with that, I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. On the resolution, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized? On the resolution, if no one else, then the sponsor may close on the resolution.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, colleagues. I want to thank all my colleagues for their support. It's looking unanimous, and I'm sure even the ones that are excused from session, they would be in support as well. I want to thank each and every one of you for the support. And likewise, recognize all the folks that have been instrumental. This is not the first resolution, as has been mentioned before. And even when I first got in the legislature back in the 27th, and I think that was 2003, even then, resolutions before that were introduced. So we're looking at that alone over 23 years, not to mention years before that, that resolutions were adopted and forwarded to the to Congress. The half loaf that Senator Duane was talking about is at least we finally got half recognition in the sense that the PACT Act was passed in 2022, which recognized, of course, the military folks that were here that were exposed finally. So will this be the last resolution? I'm hoping and praying it will be. But it's going to be an uphill battle as well to be able to get this funding for the civilian side of the House. But it's a fight that we must continue. It's a cause that we must continue. Again, precedent had been set in regards to identifying and finally recognizing that exposure happened here on our island. As was mentioned in the public hearing, I won't mention her name. I didn't get permission to mention her name tonight, but it was previously mentioned by the previous speaker regarding an ailment of her son. If I'm not mistaken, it was a blood disease. And they were fortunate enough because their family had the means to be able to go off island for the proper diagnoses. And what made her, the mother of this child, think that it was Agent Orange was the doctor had asked her, "Were you ever in Vietnam? Were you ever in Vietnam exposed to any of the chemicals over there?" "No, never in Vietnam." But she did work on base, in Anderson Air Force Base, where this chemical was used. They had the means to be able to get the diagnosis and treatment. And we're glad to say that that baby is well today. But as previous speakers have said, their family members have been diagnosed with ailments that, even within my family, both my mom and dad died of cancer. Ailments that often relate, I said, the spam, the tangkatni, that. But now we get to learn that all these ailments are attributed to a lot of what we had to endure. The chemicals that were used. I know folks from SRF testified that they would bring these boats that went down the Mekong Delta, I think it was, and they said they were so sticky from film, from the sprays, and all they were wearing was just, I think, a mask. That was it. And quite a few have, of course, succumbed to illnesses that, of an unknown origin. So with that, Madam Speaker, I want to thank again my colleagues for supporting this resolution, and thank my predecessors as well for their introduction of the resolution. And the efforts, of course, from everyone who had fought for this, for the downwinders, no different from this. Mr. Robert Celestial, who we pray will have a speedy recovery, for their efforts. But this fight doesn't end. It's still an uphill battle. But are we seeing a light in the end of the tunnel? I think so. Like I said, we got a half loaf, so let's work for that other half and make the folks who were exposed as well, who are not veterans, but worked alongside them, and the folks again who live by these places that were sprayed. Let's make them whole. And that's what we ask of Congress. And I'm looking forward to the passage and sending it to Congress, and working closely, of course, with our Congressman Jim Moylan to be able to introduce it and find the source of funding to be able to work with his colleagues. Hopefully they'll be able to get a speaker pretty soon and be able to move on and get us a little closer to closing this chapter and ending this long, hard-fought battle. With that, Madam Speaker, I want to again thank you and my colleagues for their support. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Okay. Madam Speaker, I move to Resolution 29-37 CR to bottom of third reading.
All right, on that motion to place the resolution into the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now on resolution number 223-37 LS. Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker and colleagues. I move to place, excuse me, Resolution 223-37 LS relative to standing in solidarity with the Jewish communities, supporting the people of Israel, and condemning the horrendous attack and war crimes of Hamas that occurred in October of 2023. And the third reading file, and I would like to speak on it.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My fellow colleagues, people of Guam, please let us declare that the people of Guam, via the Guam Legislature, stand with the people of Israel. All of us know from the headlines, just a little over 10 days ago, Hamas, a terrorist organization based in Gaza. My chief of staff has nothing to do with that, although his name is Vic Gaza. He has nothing to do with that, okay? With the support of the mullahs of Iran, brutally attacked the people of the country of Israel. Hamas attacked with missiles and with organized terrorist militias, invading Israel's sovereign territory, and massacring civilian men, women, and children. As Hamas invaded, they terrorized, brutalized, murdered, raped without remorse, sparing no one. In their relentless cruelty, they raped and tortured many women and killed them, declaring Israeli life as worthless. They have taken innocent Israelis and other international citizens as hostages. They are treating the lives of innocents as pawns in a violent and terrible suicide mission. We have to remember, in addition to Israelis, Hamas killed people from 35 different countries, including the United States and the Philippines. There was a Filipina caregiver who chose to stay with her Jewish patient, caregiving for her, bedridden at that. Patient said, "Flee, save your life." She decided to stay with her patient. They both got killed. The world has rarely seen such a horrific act of terrorism. There is no justification for such violence. For the slaughter of innocent civilians, men, women, and children of Israel, over 1,200 Israelis were murdered, and citizens of other nationalities were also killed. Not since the Holocaust have so many Jews been murdered in cold blood. Hamas is a terrorist organization that rained terror on Israel in an unprovoked attack. Needless to say, this resolution is in opposition of the terrorist organization. Hamas and their followers, not the innocent civilians of the Hamas Strip. This is the same thing as condemning the actions of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Abu Sayyaf, Hezbollah, and other extremist terrorist groups. The coordinated attack on October 7, 2023 was barbaric and targeted innocent civilians who were unarmed, defenseless, and vulnerable. This cannot be tolerated. This must be stopped from ever happening again. My colleagues, we must acknowledge that we are a U.S. territory, a developed Western civilization. We are not excluded from their hate. God forbid we ever encounter them in their wrath. We would suffer the same fate as the recent victims in Israel. We should and must declare our support to the people of Israel. We should let our voices be heard. The democratically elected 37th Guam Legislature supports the country and people of Israel. There is no middle ground. Israel was attacked. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Hamas is filled with hate and proudly demonstrated that to the world their desire to eliminate the right of Israel to exist, killing innocent men, women, and children who were just going about their day, the festival goers who were looking to have a good time with their friends. This could be any of us. It could have been any of us attending that festival in Israel. We should send a message loud and clear. We stand with Israel. We stand for peace, and we will not tolerate extremists, terrorists, brutality, and barbaric actions. My colleagues, I ask for your support to pass Resolution 23-37 LS. With that, Madam Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe in the principles of transparency, public involvement, and due diligence in the consideration of all resolutions put forth before the legislative body. The resolution concerning Guam's support for Israel against Hamas is a significant statement that impacts our international posture and our local sentiments. It is essential that such an impactful resolution is not only thoroughly examined, but also subjected to a comprehensive public hearing. This ensures that the voice of our community is heard and that their opinions and concerns are given weight in the final decision-making process. In the spirit of openness and democracy, I move for the return of the resolutions committee for a public hearing. This action will guarantee that every stakeholder, from community leaders to concerned citizens, has an opportunity to share their views and insights on the matter. Only then can we be confident that our stance as a representative body genuinely mirrors the sentiments of the people of Guam. I urge our fellow members to prioritize the principles of democratic governance that guide our republic by supporting this call to return the resolution to committee for a thorough and inclusive public hearing, because our people deserve to have a say and our people deserve no less. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield my time and motion to send this back to committee so we could have a thorough public hearing as it deserves.
On the motion to refer the bill back to the committee, is there any objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. On the motion to return to the committee, please raise your hand. Motion fails. Senator Parkinson, you still have the floor. All right. On the resolution, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized? Senator Nicholas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Over lunchtime, my daughter stormed into my office and she says, "What are you doing? Why are you supporting Israel?" And my daughter knows where I stand on this issue, but she wanted to make a point. after my deployment, I actively tried to convert to Judaism. I believe my soul was Jewish. I have always supported Israel. I laud Israel's innovation and technology, and I love what they brought to the world. One of my earlier campaign signs, I actually wrote in Hebrew on the bottom, Tikkun Olam, and it means to repair the world. And I was not on island when the events unfolded in Israel, but it was horrific. It was very, very heartbreaking. Why? Because my soul believes that that Israel should be a country of its own, but also I believe that a two-state solution is something that we need to work on for peace, for tikkun olam, so we can help repair the world. And so I had to explain to my daughter, and she was kind of brought to tears, that after we exchanged and we got to a better understanding, we have to condemn the wrong, the rapes and the murder and the massacre. And this resolution just does that. And it also supports Israel and their right to exist, and Palestine as well. I really believe that there's a compromise in there somewhere, that two people, different peoples, can live together. I think that's what the world wants. And so with that, I support Israel, and let us support them to bring those who have hurt the innocent. Let's help them bring those people to justice and find some way where we can live together, both sides, and repair the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator St. Nicholas. On the resolution, Senator Duenas, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. And I certainly rise in full support of Resolution 22337. Madam Speaker, the author did an outstanding job in explaining exactly what this resolution is about. This resolution is about standing with a people to whom unspeakable barbarism and atrocities were committed by terrorists. Madam Speaker, even amongst the oppression of the past, present, and oppression that will take place in the future, like the Uyghurs in China, and all kinds of different unfathomable things that we don't understand how a human being created by God can carry out. There can never be a reason to excuse this type of action, and I will condemn it in any and every form, regardless of who is the perpetrator. Madam Speaker, this is not just a dispute over land, countries, philosophies, religions. This is not a competition or a fight between two warring nations where warriors will be subjected and subject themselves to all kinds of brutal manner of death. This is innocent human beings by the hundreds, living a normal daily life. Elderly, infirmed, children. I'm not going to go through it because we've all seen it and heard it, but it needs to be spoken of. None of us who honestly are God-fearing individuals who believe and care about life can ever support any taking of life, but most especially innocent life. Innocent human life. The geopolitical situation surrounding what's going to take place in the Middle East and the actors even throughout this entire world will handle itself. Only God knows what tomorrow holds. But today, I stand and say no to barbarism, no to murdering of babies, no to the taking of innocent life. That is what this resolution says. This resolution does not wave a flag and run down the middle of the street and take a side on what nation we believe in. The support of Israel is because of the unspeakable barbarism that took place. And if another resolution hits this floor that can be substantiated from any other country that does such a thing, I will vote in favor of it as well. I will not select which country. I will not select based on my faith. If ISIS-type activity that has absolutely no respect for life, probably of any form, but most especially for human form, is committed by any other country, and I or myself or anyone introduces a resolution on this floor, doggone it, I'm going to vote for that. That is why I support this resolution. Genocide in any form, fashion, or manner must always be opposed by decent human beings. I pray for this resolution's passage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the resolution. Is there anyone else on the resolution? Senator Perez on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have some documents that I would like to append to today's general session, as well as append it to the resolution. It's in the file, the drive. So for those that need time to look at it, but if I can start speaking on it.
Please proceed.
And actually, I would like to proffer an amendment. So I think that would be getting sent to the clerks at this moment. I just want to reiterate the sentiments of one of the previous speakers that, this resolution did not receive any public hearing. And, considering what's happening, it's a fast-moving situation. And it's basically the conflict is escalating, where we're seeing more civilians being killed. And this is really concerning. We're living in such a dangerous time. We have Russia-Ukraine conflict, which hasn't been resolved. And now we're dealing with this Israeli-Hamas conflict. I think it's important to remember at this time, since this conflict has been long-standing, since the development of the Israeli state, but there was a point in time when the the opponents did reach a Nobel, they both got Nobel Prizes, Nobel Peace Prizes in the 70s. No matter how difficult this conflict was, they were able to reach a semblance of peace in the 70s. The award, those that were awarded was Menachem Begin, Prime Minister Menachem Begin, and Anwar Sadat, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. And so in thinking about, what does it take to turn this situation around? I think, we don't want to see more civilians killed. A lot of them are women and children. They are not the ones fighting this war, but they are the innocent bystanders on both sides. I think, it's really sad to see that our world is increasingly becoming a dangerous place to live in, and more so in these locations. We're also seeing UN people carrying out humanitarian missions are being killed in this region. And so people that are trying to bring peace to this area are at themselves at risk. Journalists are being killed. So we don't have really a full account of what is happening. We hear stories about human shields, that military situates themselves in an area which is surrounded by civilians. And so this is really concerning, and it has been brought, there have been human rights cases brought to the United Nations Human Rights Commission on both sides. And one of the documents that I want to share with this body is a joint statement put out October 21st of this week. And so I think, and then we're seeing more, even the UN General Assembly leader has called for a ceasefire. But if I can read this, this joint statement put out by the World Health Organization. It says, a first but limited shipment of life-saving humanitarian supplies from the United Nations and the Egyptian Red Crescent entered Gaza today on 20 trucks passing through the Rafah crossing. It will provide urgently needed lifeline to some of the hundreds of thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, who have been cut off from water, food, medicine, fuel, and other essentials. But it is only a small beginning and far from enough. More than 1.6 million people in Gaza are in critical need of humanitarian aid. Children, pregnant women, and the elderly remain in the most vulnerable. Nearly half of Gaza's population are children. With so much civilian infrastructure in Gaza damaged or destroyed in nearly 2 weeks of constant bombings, including shelters, health facilities, water, sanitation, electrical systems, time is running out before mortality rates could skyrocket due to disease outbreaks and lack of health care capacity. Hospitals are overwhelmed with casualties. Civilians face mounting challenges in accessing essential food supplies. Health facilities no longer have fuel and are running on small amounts they have secured locally. These are expected to run out in the next day or so. Water production capacity is at 5% of normal levels. Pre-positioned humanitarian supplies have already been depleted. Vulnerable people are at greatest risk, and children are dying at an alarming rate and being denied their right to protection, food, water, and health care. Nearly 1/3 of the population of Palestine was food insecure before this conflict in Gaza. Today's stocks and shops are nearly exhausted, and bakeries are closing, while tens of thousands of people are displaced, unable to cook or safely purchase food. We call for a humanitarian ceasefire along with immediate unrestricted humanitarian access throughout Gaza to allow humanitarian actors to reach civilians in need, save lives, prevent future human suffering. Flows of humanitarian aid must be at scale and sustained, and allow all Gazans to preserve their dignity. We call for a safe, sustained access to water, food, health, including sexual reproductive health, fuel, which is necessary to enable essential services. We call for the protection of all civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza, including health care facilities. We call for the protection of humanitarian workers in Gaza who are risking their lives in the service of others, and we call for the utmost respect of international humanitarian law by all parties. Gaza was a desperate humanitarian situation before the most recent hostilities. It is now catastrophic. The world must do more. Then I would also like to point out another document that I would like to append. It's basically by the PBS NewsHour. It talks about the rules of war. It states, the rules of armed conflict are governed by a set of internationally recognized laws and resolutions, including the UN Charter, which prohibits aggressive wars and allows countries the right to self-defense. It goes on to say that, so some of the things that are problematic here that we're seeing. So it says, the four conventions agreed upon in 1949 set out that civilians, the wounded, the prisoners must be treated humanely in wartime. They ban murder, torture, hostage-taking, humiliating and degrading treatment, and require fighters to treat the other side sick and wounded. The rules apply both to wars between nations and conflicts, like that between Israel and Hamas, in which one of the parties is not a state. Another key document in the law of war is that the founding Rome Statute of International Criminal Court, which defines as war crimes acts including intentional attacks on civilians, civilian settlements, or humanitarian workers, destroying property where not military necessary, sexual violence, and unlawful deportation. Other agreements ban certain types of weapons such as chemical or biological munitions. Most, but not all countries have signed up to these. It goes on to say, Hamas has fired thousands of rockets at Israeli towns and cities on October 7th that sent hundreds of gunmen across the border from Gaza. They attacked and killed civilians, including children and elderly people, in their homes and neighborhoods, and kidnapped scores of others. Israel says at least 1,400 people died and 199 others were abducted. It goes on to say, Haim Abraham, a lecturer at the Law University College of London, says, evidence of crimes is clear. They massacred civilians at their homes. They kidnapped civilians, taking them hostage. All of these things are clearly war crimes, and that these could be prosecuted in other ways. And so the question is, has Israel's response been legal? It states the Israeli military has pounded Hamas-ruled Gaza with airstrikes, blocked deliveries of food, water, fuel, electricity, and told people to leave their northern half of the strip ahead of a possible ground invasion. Gaza authorities said Thursday that, so this is already outdated, it's October 19th, said Thursday that 3,785 Palestinians have been killed and nearly 12,500 others are wounded during the days of bombardment. So these are some of the problems with the conflict and escalating casualties here of civilians, which need to be addressed. And so the amendment that I have is being passed out. Is it being passed out? Yeah, I think I would like to proffer this amendment on behalf of calling for really a meaningful solidarity with Israel and the Hamas and the Palestinians, I think in the matter of a few weeks, we're seeing an escalation of violence of civilians. And in order to bring, as a retiring speaker has said, we really need to bring peace to this area, which has been elusive for a long time. But we got to start somewhere. And that first step is really a ceasefire. I think that's one of the first things that is needed to prevent further deaths of innocent bystanders. And so this resolution states, relative to calling for peace and a ceasefire in solidarity with all civilians experiencing violence and casualties in the Israel-Hamas conflict, condemning all acts of violence in the Israel-Hamas conflict starting October 2023. And I think, the reason why I'm proffering this, obviously for the obvious reasons, this is a resolution that did not get a public hearing. And it's important to bring voices to those voices within our community that haven't been able to express their opinions, and which I think is vital. I mean, when we talk about democracy, right, it's important that we include the voices in our community. And of course, as elected leaders, we will try our best to represent them. But I think there needs to be, we need to take a pause on this and think about, what is it truly, how can we truly express solidarity with this region? We want to be able to exude peace, and it starts from really the processes that we practice here today, about allowing free speech, expression, not cutting off debate. I think this is what engenders peace in our world. And so I ask for my colleagues' support, since it was Masi.
Masi, Senator. All right. Is there any objection to appending the documents to the record? Is there any objection to appending the documents to the record? To the record of our discussion? All right. There's an objection. All in favor of appending the documents in the drive as to our journal? Please raise your hand. All in favor? Motion fails. There's also a motion to, as passed out, to amend the title of the resolution. On that motion, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? On the motion, if no one, would you like to close on your motion?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is very difficult because here we are trying to support a region riddled with conflict. And I think what's really needed at this time is depolarization. And we're hearing today that this is the problem that we have in our world, is not being able to listen to the other side, not being able to dialogue and try to come to a compromise and understanding. And I think also just to shut down dialogue. I think this is a real concern. We're seeking peace in this region when we don't even engender it here in this body alone. I find it very hypocritical that we're trying to promote protection of a region when we can't even practice it ourselves here in this body. I think just the simple addition of information, wars have been started for that reason. But we must try harder here. And I think it's unfortunate that my colleagues have not don't see the value in nuances and the importance of practicing democratic principles. Yeah, I'm just highly disappointed in my colleagues who choose not to include dialogue and a balanced perspective, and for not really allowing other voices in the community to be heard. Sujus Masi.
Sujus Masi, Senator. On the motion to amend the title, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails. On the resolution, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized? On the resolution, Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, this is a tough one. I feel like walking on eggshells, and I've never been called light-footed. But, you know, if I understood the motion correctly, was the motion to upload documents to the session drive?
No, it was to add those documents to our journal as part of our discussion today.
Yeah.
They are already on the session drive for our review.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this rush to the question, kill the debate, kill the discussion too many times in this term. And I think that since this morning, we've all been in receipt of the emails and the phone calls and the petitions about the other side of this issue. And I just don't think that this support Israel is as black and white as some of my colleagues might think. I mean, I got to say, I feel like we have a lot of other issues, pressing issues, facing our people and our island. And I took heat. I didn't even vote for the resolution supporting Taiwan because I just feel like I don't want to get involved. I'm no historian, but I'm aware of the history. The United States helped create Hamas, and when they no longer serve our interests, we oppose them. The same thing with Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was an ally of the United States in the 1980s. And anybody who knows me knows I didn't stand with Mauna Kea. I didn't stand with the Ukraine. I never signed a resolution supporting this or that. Because I find sometimes that we fall all over ourselves trying to stand with everybody, but at the end of the day, who's standing with us? Who's standing with us? So yeah, as long as there's doubt about what the people of Guam want us to say to the United States Congress, then I cannot in good conscience support this resolution, and I think it would behoove the sponsors to send it back and have that public hearing, and let's get all the voices of Guam in there and make sure that whatever we're sending over to the Delegate Moylan is an accurate and true representation of what our people, all of our people, believe. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the resolution, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized?
On the main motion, Speaker Terlahi, you're recognized.
Thank you. I too think this is a tough one because we have not heard from the people of Guam their opinion on us as a legislature taking a stance on this issue, or in particular the wording of this issue. And I think the wording is very important because things have really evolved since this incident first broke out. In the beginning, of course, around the world, there was shock and condemnation of Hamas. But the retaliation of Israel since then, or their self-defense, as they call it, has also brought criticism from the United Nations authorities because of the deaths of civilians and the deaths of children, and the impediments that the bombing has brought to hospitals, to aid, to water, electricity, and all of the necessities of life, and the forced evacuation when there's no place to go. These are the things that this situation has evolved. It is evolving, and we're kind of far away. We are getting our sources from, some mainstream media, but while I think it would be appropriate for us as a legislature to condemn the terrorist acts, I do not want, by this resolution, to be approving of the killing of children, of the bombing of hospitals, of the things that have been described as war crimes as well. So I would condemn all war crimes that are being done. And I think the world community is looking for a ceasefire so that those things can be stopped. The killing of innocent children can be stopped. And I would support this wholeheartedly if it called for a ceasefire, as my colleague tried to do. Because that continues to condemn terrorism, and it continues as well to say that the people of Guam are not going to support war crimes by anyone. And every day, I try to keep myself informed of the situation, but I do think that we are not fully informed, that we are semi-informed, and I read a lot of the news. I follow what the different governments have tried to do and what the United Nations has said as well. And I wish all of that could be put on the record, and I think we need to vote with all the information before us. If it's critical that we take a position in favor of one nation versus another nation, which is what this resolution looks like it's doing, as opposed to taking a position against terrorism, I think that would be unanimous. Thank you.
Silas Masi, Madam Speaker. On the main motion, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the main motion? Last call. If there's no one who wishes to speak on the main motion, the main sponsor may close. Senator Lujan? Okay.
Sponsor may close. Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, for the debate. Again, I just want to reiterate that this resolution is a condemnation of a terrorist act. It's not a condemnation of a race. It is definitely a condemnation of acts of terrorism as we experienced in 9/11 years back. And so with that, I want to thank my colleagues, and I motion to place, again, Resolution 223-37 on third reading, the bottom of third reading file.
On the motion, there's been an objection. All in favor of placing the resolution on the third reading file, please raise your hand. Motion fails. All right. Yeah, yes, you may. Yes. The next bill on our agenda is Bill 173, which requires a committee of the whole. I have asked the governor's office to ask a fiscal panel to be here at 2 p.m. in light of the state funeral, but Senator San Agustin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to convene in the committee of the whole and recess until tomorrow, October 26, 2023 at 11:30 a.m. for the purpose of conducting the state funeral service for the late Honorable Retired United States District Court Chief Justice for the District of Guam, Johnny Sablan Ampinco, and to allow the honored guests into the Speaker, Antonio R. Ampinco, Legislature Session Hall, and that it be conducted in its formal manner.
On that motion, to convene into the committee of the whole and recess until tomorrow at 11:30 for the state funeral service for the late Honorable Retired United States District Court Chief Judge of Johnny Sablan Ampinco. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, we will be resolved into committee of the whole. So please, the services begin at 11:30, so please be here before that. We are recessed until tomorrow at 11:30, committee of the whole.